35 years ago this week, possibly one of the most famous ghost sightings of all time happened just up the road in Stocksbridge, and that was the very first sighting on the Stocksbridge Bypass. It was under construction, and it was September the 11th, 1988. Two workmen thought they could hear children playing. It was about 11 at night, and they could hear like ring a ring a roses, and they thought, what on earth is going on? So they went to investigate, and they saw between 8 and 10 children dancing arm in arm around one of the power pylons. And as they're dancing, they're just singing softly. They're kind of like, oi, get off! Because they were just thinking, the kids are going to end up hurting themselves. It's a building site. As they watched, the kids just faded away and faded out of existence. They weren't initially too scared by this. They were kind of confused, but they still thought that a hoax was going on. So what they decided to do was they went back to their hut and got in their Land Rover and they go and investigate further. So they drove up towards P-Royd Bridge, which was where they could see the children playing. And as they got on top of P-Royd Bridge, they saw it. There was this faceless, hooded figure just right in front of them, and it just terrified the absolute life out of them. They started feeling as though stones and things were being pelted at their Land Rover. The thing started shaking. They were absolutely terrified, and they just got out of there as quick as they could. They just sped back. That morning, PCB went on duty at Stocksbridge Police Station, and he saw both men on the steps outside just rocking back and forth. And they were absolutely terrified, and the policeman just went, what are you doing here? I don't know who you're going to call, but it's not the police. We don't deal with ghosts, they're not part of our remit. Maybe you should go and see a priest or something. So he let himself into the office, went in. A few hours later, the policeman got a phone call from a priest. It was from the main church up at Stocksbridge, and he'd got the two security guards, and they were refusing point blank to leave the church. So the policeman went, right, all right, went up there to investigate and speak to them. And they were like, all right, we'll take down the story, we'll come and have a look tonight. Completely sceptical, not believing a word of it. So the policeman went up that night, and as they were up there, they saw some movement on the bridge. And they're like, oh, we've seen it. Is it a figure? As they looked closer, it was a piece of tarpaulin, just blowing back and forth. And the police just went, are you seriously telling me two serious security guards are absolutely freaking out over a piece of tarpaulin? So they drove round to where the tarpaulin was, put it down with a couple of bricks, and they were just sat in the car absolutely, basically pissing themselves at how two security guards could be so stupid. That was when they saw it too. Right outside the window, one of them looked and screamed and saw the torso of a man pushed right to the window. Then he was at the other side of the police car, then back again. Whatever this was, it was hounding the police car, and then the police car starts shaking. The police car starts banging like as though something's pelting it with rocks and stones, although they could see no damage of it. The police are freaking out, they're trying to start the car, This goes on for 5 minutes, they can't start the police car, the engine's just ticking over, the car's shaking and being attacked by this unseen force. Eventually they get the police car started, they speed out of there as fast as they can, and there is something in the boot. They can hear the boot just banging and banging and banging. When they get about halfway back to the police station, they finally calm down enough to stop. And as they look in the boot, they kind of stop and look, there's nothing in there. And they're like, what the hell was that? So they wrote it down in the police log, and that normally would have been that for the story. But because it was a slow news day, the Star sent one of their reporters round to all the police stations to have a look at the police logs. And because of that, it ended up on the front page of the Star. A day later, it was the front page news all around the world, this sighting. And from then, it's become possibly one of the most famous ghost sightings in the whole country. The black cloaked figure is often described as being the monk, but there's two, to me, distinct figures that are being seen up there. There's the black cloak figure, and he's often seen when there's been accidents. As you know, the Stocksbridge Bypass is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in the whole country. It was opened on Friday the 13th of May 1988. So if you're opening the road on Friday the 13th, you're kind of setting it up for a little bit of bad luck, shall we say. And for the first 10 years it was open, it was averaging a fatal accident about every 6 months. Thousands and thousands of pounds were spent on the road to make it safer, And now we're averaging an accident about every 9 months in terms of fatal ones. So it's still happening, and it's still absolutely whatever this figure is. I had a poor lady who I spoke to a few weeks back, and she said that she was speaking to her daughter on the phone a few years ago, and she was a passenger in a car going along the Stocksbridge Bypass, and she heard her daughter scream, "There's a hooded man in the road, there's a hooded man in the road." There was this horrible screech of metal, and then the line went dead. And then an hour later she had the police officer on the door, and her daughter died in the car crash. So I've got her permission to tell that story, but I've got to put it to date for obvious reasons. And that's kind of a repeated story there. There's also people seeing this monk praying in the middle of the road who just disappears. But whenever people see the monk, they don't seem to see the malicious feeling that this cloaked, hooded figure gets. And whatever's going on up there, it just seems to, there's such a weirdness about it. Like with the kids as well, it was always believed and written about at the time that they died in a mining accident. But if you look at the history of the area, there's never been mining up there. However, in 1921, there was a bus accident with a bunch of school kids, and 4 school kids died, because right up at the top of the road, this bus just toppled down. So there's something definitely weird going on up there. And has anyone ever driven up the Stocksbridge Bypass? Have you seen anything weird while up there? Got weird feelings up there? I'm definitely getting some nods here. It's definitely a weird atmosphere. Of course, there's some who say that the whole thing was a hoax. It was concocted by the security guards in relation to their boss to bring more business in to a struggling security company. The only thing with that is nobody remembers the name of the security company involved. So if it was a hoax, A, there's so many other people seeing things up there, and B, you kind of have to wonder what was the benefit. For me personally, this was the case that got me into the paranormal. It got me into the weird. I remember reading about it as a kid. There was a documentary, I think it was 94, with Michael Aspel. It was all over the TV, Strange but True. And then that's kind of inspired like a fascinating, like lifelong interest in it for me. So yeah, that's kind of a very condensed, shortened version of the Stocksbridge Bypass. All right, thank you. Well, thank you all for listening. And thank you all for following. If you want to follow me on Facebook, I'm on Facebook as Strange Britain. I'm on Instagram as Strange Britain, but as you probably can tell, I don't know how to use Instagram yet. So if you just follow me on either of them, you'll get some of my upcoming walks. I'm doing a slightly different tilt for Halloween. It's going to be about 70% different to what you've had tonight. A lot more Victorian true crime, kind of, to make it a bit more fun. I also do another regular walk around the Norton area of Sheffield, because you've got Bunting Nook up there, which is supposedly one of the most haunted roads in the whole of England. Right, if anyone's got any questions or anything as well, I'm happy to chat for a little bit at the end. Right, thank you.
Thank you.